Here we have the second mini-boss of the Woodfall Temple, Gekko. It's pretty vicious looking, but it's not that hard. Tattle says as much if you look for her advice, and he has a very slow attack that's easily avoided. I think his animations are kind of humorous to watch though, especially him looking around the room. Speaking of humor, you're probably expecting me to make a bunch of frog-related puns right about now, but that would be totally inappropriate. Yeah, that's bad. So once you're sick of looking at him, you're going to go ahead and smack him with your sword a few times to move on to the next phase. A snapper will join him, and the two will then spin around the area repeatedly. If they get too close to you, simply use your shield to defend against it. To separate them, you simply want to attack it like a regular snapper, by either using the blast mask or bombs to flip it over, or you can use the Deku mask to shoot up into its belly by using any of the Deku flowers that are around this room. When you do it successfully, they will drop some arrows for you to stock up. Gekko himself will then start climbing around the walls and the ceiling, and eventually he'll rejoin with the snapper. So you want to attack him before this. You can just press the C button and start using the bow to aim around, but that's somewhat difficult and awkward to figure out where he's at and such, so instead I recommend facing towards him, and when Tattle flies over, you want to press the Z button to start targeting him. Now hold in the C button to ready an arrow, wait for Gekko to stop moving. When he pauses for a few seconds, you want to release the arrow to damage him. The two will then rejoin forces again, and the process repeats. You just want to do this a total of 3 times, and you should defeat this mini-boss easily. When you successfully kill Gekko, he'll burst into a regular old frog, almost like the Skull Kid empowered him somehow and made him go crazy, huh? Anyway, these frogs are important for an optional side quest later on, so just keep that in mind, as we will be returning here for a later frog quest later on in the game. Both of the doors will then open, so run over to the new one, which is to the far north, and has a giant colorful chest inside containing the boss key, which will allow us to enter the boss door and complete this dungeon. Woot! With that, you want to go back to the previous room and use the Deku Flower to fly over to the platform on your right. You want to stay on the upper level. Now, if you do fall down to the lower level, you can use the Deku Flower that's in the middle in that center platform that's going up and down. You can use it to reach that upper level as well. There's a floor switch on the second level of the main room that creates a pair of ladders. I used it in the previous video, but if you haven't stepped on that switch before, you should definitely do that now. It makes a shortcut to the upper level and makes things easier for us. Anyway, while standing on the floor switch, you can Z-target the shrine in the center, and Tattle will hint that you should be able to light the torch that's in the middle of it. The game isn't too clear at this point, but you can shoot arrows through flames to make your arrow on fire, and thus you can light other torches with that. So shoot through a flame to light other torches. The goal is to shoot just above the torch itself, because if you hit the actual torch, it won't count. This confuses a lot of people, but it's just kind of something to watch out for. So basically, if it makes that metallic clang noise, you know you did it wrong, and you need to aim a little bit higher. When you do successfully light the torch, this will make the shrine in the center rise up and open up like a big wooden flower that suddenly spins around. It's pretty impressive that a single torch can power all of that. Before moving onward, there's several stray fairies that are now available to us, some of which you could have gotten earlier. If you're not interested in this, just skip ahead a bit in the video and we'll move on to the next part of the dungeon. In the main room, there's a stray fairy that is trapped inside a bubble on the upper platform to the north. Just want to go ahead and slash it, and then you can collect it. You want to put on the Deku mask and use the Deku Flower here to fly over to the small overhang in the northwest corner of the room, where there's a floor switch next to a torch. You can Z-target this torch itself for a clue from Tattle. We'll be dealing with that here in a little bit, so you want to take off the Deku mask and step on the floor switch to create a large chest near the south entrance of the room that contains yet another stray fairy. You want to go ahead and hop down, and now the cool thing about the fact that we activated that shrine in the middle is that it removes all of the poison in the dungeon, making the water clean and safe to swim in. In addition, it kills all of the vicious flowers, so you can now safely jump on all of those lily pads in your Hylian form as well if you really want to. At this point, there's 2 more stray fairies that you might have noticed and collected earlier, but one of them could have been a bit tricky with the poison water and all, so I waited until now to get it. You want to enter the west room with all the bridges and the stone block in the center, and just south of the block itself, there's a small platform above you that has a beehive hanging underneath it. You technically could have hit it with a bubble blast using your Deku mask earlier to snag that stray fairy, but I waited until now to get them all at once. The last one remaining in this room is underneath the bridge itself in the center, inside a bubble. You can stand on the platform to the far northern side, or on the top of the bridge on the far south, and you can shoot it with an arrow. And then you can use the Great Fairy Mask to bring it over to you, and it will fly over on its own accord. Or if you don't have that mask, you can simply jump into the water, when the poison is removed, of course, and swim over to it. I think shooting it makes this a little bit easier to get, rather than swimming through the bubble to pop it, because it's kind of hard. You have to, swim right into the middle of the bubble. You can't just kind of swim through the side of it, so it makes it easier to collect the stray fairy if you shoot it first. Once you've collected it, go ahead and return to the main room, and then jump onto the spinning wooden shrine in the center. So as I pointed out earlier, there's an unlit torch in the corner of this room, and since we have a torch here in the center that's now lit, we can use it to shoot an arrow through the flame and light the other torch. Remember, the goal is to aim just above the torch you're trying to light, so that the fire passes over the top of it. So this part is actually a bit tricky since we're spinning around, so don't be surprised if it takes you a few tries. You'll notice here that I got it on my first try, and as I like to say, you know you've played too much Majora's Mask when. So when you do manage to light it, it will open the far northern door, so head on through. In the final room, you'll see the boss door straight ahead, and if you've been following along with me, you should have defeated Gekko and gotten the boss key, so you'll be able to access the boss, and you should have a total of 11 stray fairies at this point, so the only remaining stray fairies are in this room. There's 2 dragonflies in this room as well, and they will come after you once you get a little closer, so I recommend just taking them out from afar using the bow. There's also a stray fairy inside the bubble that's on the left flaming pillar, so you should just break that bubble. You're going to have to do it at some point if you plan on collecting it, so it might as well be now. Once they're taken care of, you can hop down and fly to the center platform where there's some extra rupees. It's not really very much, and it doesn't really matter, but you'll probably see it and it's calling your name, so you should just get that out of your system now. You want to hop back to the first platform and use the deck of flowers to work your way up the little alcoves, collecting the stray fairies as you go. In the southeast corner of the map, there are 2 stray fairies and bubbles, so collect those and then head over to the opposite side where 1 more awaits you, giving you a total of 14 stray fairies. Once you have snagged the 14th stray fairy, you can either stay on this platform here, or you can hop down one, so either way, it's just personal preference. From here, you want to take off the Deku Mask and shoot an arrow at the stray fairy if you haven't done that yet, and it'll pop the bubble. It makes it a little bit easier to collect in a moment. Then you want to shoot an arrow at the crystal switch on the opposite side of the room. This temporarily puts out the flames, but only for a few seconds, so you have to be quick. This can be really frustrating because if you touch the flames in your Deku form, you'll fall down and you could burn up, starting the room over again and having to kill the enemies all over, so it's kind of annoying. You want to jump or fly over to the platform on the far west, and then quickly use the Deku Flower here to fly across the little pillars before the flames come back. You want to use the Deku Flower on the second pillar, and then from there you will be able to get up on top of the far eastern platform. At the far north part of this room, there are 2 pillars with red rupees on them that are guarded by Spatulas that are hanging from the ceiling. You can shoot them with arrows and kill them if you want. I recommend you just ignore these rupees, though, because it's not really worth the trouble, and you'll most likely fall down after getting the money anyway, so that's lots of trouble getting all the way back here, and all that effort just to get 20 rupees each. You want to fly to the final platform and break the jars for some final goodies, and when you're emotionally prepared, go ahead and enter the boss door, where I will meet up with you in the next video.